Well, welcome to Meck's online campus and the celebration of our 30th anniversary. Do you know what 30 years ago was like? Some of you who are old enough to even remember what 30 years was like. 30 years ago, there was no commercial internet, no email, no texts, no tweeting, no iPhones, no iPads. 30 years ago, the president was Bush, but Bush number 41, Bush 43's dad. We hadn't even started the Clinton era. In light of the death of the Queen and the now King Charles and his Queen consort Camilla taking center stage, you might find it of interest that 1992, 30 years ago, started not only with Princess Diana alive, but with Charles and Diana still together. In terms of movies, you had Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, The Last of the Mohicans, My Cousin Vinny, Basic Instinct, Disney's Aladdin, and of course, the epitome of cultural sophistication, Wayne's World. When we watched TV, there was no Netflix, there was no Disney Plus, there was no Amazon Prime, there was no Amazon anything. Amazon didn't exist. We watched what was broadcast on the three legacy networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, which meant shows like Roseanne, Home Improvement, Murphy Brown, Murder, She Wrote, Full House, and one of my favorites, Cheers. Speaking of TV, in 1992, MTV actually showed music videos. Music we then bought on cassette. Music like Boys to Men singing End of the Road, Eric Clapton's Tears in Heaven, En Vogue's My Lovin', Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana, Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, and unfortunately, Achy Breaky Heart by Billy Ray Cyrus. And just for context, in 1992, musical context, Justin Bieber hadn't even been born. But the ranks of those who had been born, in fact, born exactly 30 years ago, include basketball star Kyrie Irving, actress Daisy Ridley of Star Wars fame, English singer Sam Smith, and American singers and actors Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato, Nick Jonas, Cardi B, and the daughter of the man with the achy breaky heart, Miley Cyrus. On the local front, if you're familiar with Charlotte, 30 years ago, the city limits of Charlotte held around 400,000 people. To put that into perspective, today it is nearing 1 million. There was no Bank of America, just Nations Bank. There was no Wells Fargo, at least around here. There wasn't even Wachovia, which got bought by Wells Fargo. No, that bank line goes back to First Union in 1992. If you flew out of Charlotte, you didn't fly American. You didn't fly U.S. Airways that American eventually bought. In 1992, you were still flying on Piedmont Airlines in and out of this region. In 1992, the first NASCAR race ever held under lights was held at the Speedway. There were no Carolina Panthers. We did have the Charlotte Hornets, but with names like Kendall Gill and Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning and Muggsy Bogues. Back then, they played at the Charlotte Coliseum. And if that has you scratching your head because you've never heard of the Charlotte Coliseum, that's because it does no longer exist. And also in Charlotte, 30 years ago, tucked away, barely noticed, in a hotel ballroom at the University Place Hilton Hotel, a church named Mecklenburg held its first service. By the third week, we had a little over 50 people in attendance. Now, after 30 years, we have thousands attending in person and online. But with all that's changed in 30 years, in the world, in Charlotte, and in our church, one thing has remained the same: who we are. Because we have a unique DNA that has not changed over the entire run. You know, every now and then I get asked, so what kind of church is Meck? And it's hard to know how to answer, not because I don't know the answer, but because I know the answer I want to give, but I'm trying to figure out what is it they're after, because I don't always know. You see, when some people ask, all they really want to know is, okay, are you a Christian church? And of course we are. And then there's another group where all they want to know is, well, what kind of Christian church? They're not really looking for specificity, but more like, are you like the Catholic or are you more like the Protestant? But they usually find out pretty quickly that we're not Catholic because even though we have a lot of people attending from a Catholic background, and I do get called father from time to time. So if Protestant, what denomination? I mean, are we Methodist? Are we Baptist? Are we Presbyterian? And actually, we're interdenominational, which means we have people attending from all kinds of denominational backgrounds, including no denominational background at all. Others, when they ask what kind of church we are, want to know, they're really after the style of worship. Like if we're traditional or contemporary. Are we smells and bells, or are we drums and Starbucks? And even if today is the first time you're joining us online, you probably already know the answer to that one, though we feel free to borrow from all of Christian history and its rich tradition of worship and experience of God. Some just want to know about our theology, or at least the spirit of our theology, the kind of like the stream of it. Like, are we legalistic, rule-oriented, right-wing, judgmental, fundamentalist hardliners? Or are we fashionable, left-wing, politically correct liberals? Or are we the world's ending, snake-handling fringe cult group? And for most people, if we're just none of the above, we pass the test. We're none of the above. We stand in the stream of classic Christian historic orthodoxy. And then, of course, some people just want to know about the senior pastor. Is he some young 20-something, wet behind the ears, tattooed, skinny jean, designer sneaker wearing kind of guy who calls everybody bro? Or is he wise, mature, sophisticated, seasoned leader like his same-aged peer, George Clooney? We know the answer to that. Really, you take away the looks, the success, the money, and the talent, and I'm just like the guy. But what really sets Meck apart, what has guided us, fueled us, propelled us forward for the last 30 years is one thing, and it's our mission. The mission of Mecklenburg Community Church is to see people who are not in a relationship with God become fully devoted followers of Jesus. So where did we get that mission? Did we just kind of make it up? No. It was given to us by Jesus himself. In fact, this is what drove his life. This is what consumed him. He talked about it nonstop, every chance he could, fleshed it out every chance he could. Let me take you just one moment in his life that, along with scores of others just like it, shows you how passionate he was about this. This is found in Luke's biography of Jesus. And it begins, "Now the tax collectors and the sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, 'This man welcomes sinners and eats with them.'" Okay, now stop there and think about that scene for a minute. Here was Jesus spending time with people of incredibly ill repute. Tax collectors who were infamous in that day for swindling people and extortion, and a blanket term sinners, which is meaning people with foul mouths who'd made all kinds of mistakes and cheated people out of money and slept in all the wrong beds and made a habit of lying. Irreligious people who hadn't darkened the doorstep of a church in ages. People who lived lives that went against everything the religious leaders of the day stood for and taught. That's who was gathering around Jesus, listening to him, taking in everything he had to say. In fact, we're told that they were even eating together, sharing meals together. And if you're wondering, why was that even mentioned? That seems like an inconsequential little bit of trivia. Well, it's because in the culture of that day, that was a big deal. If you ate with someone, it was like saying, this is my friend. This is someone I care about. This is someone that I have relationally, socially accepted. This is someone I'm bringing into the orbit of my life. This is someone I affirm as having worth and as having value, which is why the religious leaders of that day would not eat with any of those people. They wouldn't eat with someone who didn't meet their understanding of a certain moral lifestyle. And that's why they even made that remark. Well, he even eats with them. It was meant to be cutting. So what Jesus was doing, it was scandalous. But the people he ate with, that he was with, were just captivated by this man who compromised nothing, welcomed them, though, and spent time with them and talked with them about a God who loved them and who cared for them and who wanted to be in a relationship with them and that wanted to ambush their life with not just truth, but grace as well. Not to condemn and to critique, but to love them and forgive them. A God who wanted to just assault their lives with forgiveness and a new beginning. And while that whole interplay was kind of happening, here were the religious leaders, off to the side, gathered together in their holy huddle and saying, can you believe this guy? What is he thinking? They're the enemy. Doesn't he know that we have separated ourselves from them and we're supposed to separate ourselves? Doesn't he know that it's us versus them, good guys versus bad guys, black hats versus white hats? We're the God-fearing, Bible-reading, Chick-fil-A eating types. Them, they've probably never even said my pleasure in their entire life. Why, he even acts like he likes them. You'd think his whole mission was about them. And that was the closest they got to the truth. What's interesting is that Jesus apparently heard them muttering. When you mutter, you're kind of like, "Meh." I've always found that funny because they were muttering 100 or so yards away. So this was some divine listening. The Bible says that he then turned and went to them and was so upset that they didn't get what the heart of the Father was about. So upset that they didn't see the truth and the spiritual reality of these people's lives, that he told them 3 straight stories to try and set them straight. And if you're a Bible trivia nut, this is the only time in all of recorded Scripture where we find Jesus so exercised about something that he did that. And the 3 stories that he told them were of a lost sheep, a lost coin, and a lost son. In the first story, someone charged with watching 100 sheep lost one. And he was so concerned that he left the 99 and embarked on an all-out search and rescue mission to find that one lost sheep. When he found it, he put it on his shoulders and went back and just threw a party. And then Jesus told the story of a woman who lost one of 10 coins. It was a tenth of all that she owned. And so she began a painstaking sweep through every inch of her home until she found it. And then she just threw a party. And then one of the most poignant stories Jesus ever told, a father lost his son, at least lost him relationally. The son went to the father and asked for his inheritance before the father even died. And if you know anything about the culture of that day, this was a heartbreaking slap in the face to their entire relationship. It was telling his father, in essence, I wish you were dead, but you're dead to me. And then give me, if you're going to give me anything, give it to me. You don't have to, but if you're going to, do it because I'm through with you. And then taking off and squandering all of his inheritance on wild living, ending up with nothing. And the economy then took a downturn, and the son ended up working for next to nothing on an agricultural enterprise. And things got so bad, and his poverty and hunger so intense that he decided to go home to his father and ask for forgiveness. And you can imagine how beaten down and broken he had to be to do that, how humiliated and embarrassed and awkward. But he began to prepare speech. It was even rehearsing it as he made his way home. Father, I've sinned against heaven and I've sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Just can you take me back just as a hired hand? When he headed down the final road to his home, in Jesus' story, he says there waiting for him was the father. A father who had been standing on the front porch, looking, longing, hoping. Father who'd probably been doing that at sunup before work every day, and then going right back out on the porch at sundown after the workday had ended, not knowing where his son had gone, not knowing if he was alive or dead, but constantly scanning the horizon, constantly watching, constantly hoping that his son would return. And when on one of those days he sees his son, he loses it. Jesus says he picks up his robe and starts running down the road to embrace his son, just running a full out, gallop. And again, in the ancient Near Eastern culture of that day, no father would have ever done that. In fact, the people listening to this story as Jesus told it would have had their mouths drop open hearing that detail, because it would have been considered demeaning to the father. The role of the son in this kind of situation was to come and grovel, and then maybe the father would show leniency, but more than likely he'd be punished, in some cases even killed. But in Jesus' story, the father picks up his robe, to free up his running, and runs to his son and embraces him and kisses him and puts new clothes on his back and shoes on his feet and rings on his fingers, and then throws the most extravagant party imaginable in honor of his returning wayward son. And he was just saying, for this son of mine was dead and now is alive again. He was lost and now he's found. Jesus finished those stories. And you can just imagine looking in the eyes of the religious leaders and in essence following up saying, do you not get it? Do you not get it? Do you not get what's going on in this world and the spiritual realities of heaven and hell? Do you not get the heart of the Father toward the lost? In these stories, Jesus made it clear what his mission on this planet was all about and what ours is to be as well. In all 3 stories, what was lost mattered, and it mattered deeply to the person who lost it. In all 3 stories, there was nothing more important than finding what was lost. And if you've ever lost something, friends, that you love and it's missing, you search for it. And the greater the value of what is lost, the more urgent, the more all-encompassing, the more determined the search is. For those of you who are Christ followers, the God we worship, the God we follow, the God we are banking our eternity on, the God of this church, the God of our life is completely taken with this, occupied with this. The heart of the Father is in absolute, ongoing, permanent search mode. Jesus wanted to make it absolutely clear that lost people matter to God, and as a result, they better matter to us. And Jesus never let up on this. This coursed through every teaching, every message, every conversation, every action. Let me just rapid fire some of that teaching your way. Jesus said, "Who needs a doctor? The healthy or the sick? I'm here inviting outsiders, not insiders, an invitation to a changed life, changed inside and out. Your Father in heaven doesn't want to lose even one. And then I came to seek and to save the lost." And if you have any doubt about the passion of Jesus on this, even while impaled on a cross between two other men who had been convicted of stealing, do you know what Jesus was doing? During those last agonizing moments with life and blood draining from his body, he was trying to win one more, trying to save one more. Even then, don't tell me this isn't the heart of God. Don't tell me this isn't his passion. Don't tell me this isn't his mission. And certainly don't tell Jesus that. The driving force, the ultimate reality of Jesus' life was that he had been sent on a mission, and that mission was singular in focus. It was to those who were in desperate need to be in a saving relationship with the living God. And the reason is because Jesus knew something more clearly than anyone who had ever lived before or would ever live again, that heaven and hell are real, and real people go there. Go to one or the other. Jesus' most well-known statement on the subject is so clear in terms of mission that it's been known and called the Great Commission. Here's what he said. Jesus came and told his disciples, "I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore go, make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And then teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you. And be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." That's the target on the wall. That's the mission that the purposes of the church are intending to accomplish. So, what does the future hold for Meck? I can honestly say, with more certainty than ever, that I have no idea. If you had told me even 4 years ago that we would close all in-person weekend services for 15 months, go entirely online, and during that time not only continue to grow and reach people, but to grow and reach people at rates we had never before experienced, even reaching what we had as our 2020 vision, which was to become a church of 20,000 active attenders with ministry in 20 countries, and that we would emerge committed to the core of our being to a hybrid model and embraces both the physical and the digital, I would have said, there's just no way that's coming. But that's what came. That's what happened. But one thing I can say about our future, one thing I can say about our next run with absolute clarity and conviction, we will continue to be on the mission that we have been on from day one. A mission I will never tire of. Because I've had a front row seat to something that we've done 3,871 times over the last 30 years at Meck. 3,871 times I've seen someone emerge from the waters of baptism through the ministry of this church. I don't want to stop having that front row seat. And I know you don't either.